Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transforming their business, and I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels. Hello everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of Strive and Thrive. On today's show, I would like to welcome Frances Holmes. Welcome, Frances. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I've known Frances for a long time, but Frances is an award-winning founder of Speak Out Revolution. And we'll come on to talk about that very interesting business as part of this discussion. But also, to her credit, she is also a full-time employee of Microsoft, as well as being a new mum of a one-year-old daughter, Felicity. So balancing a startup, full-time job, and a small family. So today, we're not just going to touch on the business she set up, but also the challenges of being an entrepreneur while working, while managing a family, and also hopefully some tips on how others can do that themselves and how people can build businesses that have purpose. So thank you for joining us, Frances, and welcome. So could you, as a start of 10, in a very brief, we'll give you a 60-second challenge, kind of summarize your career and how you've got to where you've got to today?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. My career journey has been more of a roller coaster and accidental paths with no strategic direction. I started off as a mathematician working for UK government, realised I did not want to be a mathematician at all anymore. Quickly moved into consultancy and technical advisory role, finally landing with Mike for my sins, working with him in UK defence, again in consultancy, leading to innovation, and coming full circle back to Microsoft doing tech, data. And on that journey, I also founded Speak Out Revolution whilst working full time in these very high, stressful careers. As more of an accidental project, a mission that we knew there was a problem, trying to solve it, and a company popped out the end of it. And now we're trying to build that whilst also running our full-time jobs and families. Is that a good overview?
That's brilliant. What I'll do is pass over to Romesh and let him deep dive into Speak Out.
Brilliant. Frances, welcome to the podcast, and really happy to have you on. So wow, that's all I can say as my first observation. You are juggling lots of things right now. So yeah. So tell us, well done first of all, but tell us about Speak Out Revolution and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so Speak Out came from a challenge we saw in the market. It's all focused on data-driven insights on inclusion in the workplace. It kicked off for bullying and harassment in the workplace, and we've sort of expanded out with different use cases. But that's where our key mission lies: collecting individuals' lived experiences anonymously, and then sharing the data insights with organisations that will drive change, and individual organisations that really want to improve their processes and procedures to help their staff. It started as an idea. We knew there was a challenge. We went and tested it in the market a bit by accident when we were helping a friend overcome their issues in the workplace, realised that their leadership literally didn't care that there was a challenge in their workplace, even if we had data to back it up. And we knew that we had to address it more systematically and more holistically across a global insights rather than an individual organisation. And that's when Speak Out Revolution was born.
Fantastic. So I can see the link between your kind of maths background and the love of data. I'm into data myself, so I really appreciate that. But so can you tell us more about what data you're collecting and how is it harnessed by your client organizations?
Yeah, so we've got an anonymous survey on our website that anyone who's experienced bullying harassment can go and complete and share their lived experience. And it has both qualitative and quantitative data, so numerical side, and also people's lived experience in words fashion as well. So you can share your experience and your route to resolution, because we see that's where most organizations can fail. Then we display the quantitative data, so all the numbers, open source on our website through our dashboard called the Speak Out dashboard. So any organisation can go and see what challenges exist in their sector or in their geography and start doing things free of charge. And then we can support them further as a paid for service to really dive into that data, really understand where their challenges are, and support them wider. We also do data partnerships with other organisations that are driving really impactful change, because we want our data to help people. That's the key. And that's why we're collecting it. We want to solve the systematic issues, and we're not going to do it on our own. So we also help other organisations change legislation, go out to industry, go out to academia to help. Our latest big thing was with Can't Buy My Silence, which is an amazing win, changing the way NDAs are used in the workplace for harassment and bullying, which was a great success.
Wow, so that's a real example of a win there. So can I ask what's motivated you? And you're a co-founder, right, of the business? Is
Yes,
that right?
I am. Thank God for Marie Hemingway, who is my other co-founder. She is absolutely amazing. She is definitely the driving force, and I run on her coattails. What's driving us? So I think when we started it, we knew there was slightly an issue and we wanted to find out more. For us, as I'm a mathematician and she's a physicist, we believe you can't solve a problem when you don't understand it fully. So collecting data was how we understood the problem better. The more data we got, the more of an issue we realised bullying and harassment is in our workplaces, and no one is really solving it. There is little things in place, but actually when these challenges arise in organisations, they go and hide behind a legal firm to do an internal survey that's then protected data. They don't share the results with even their employees, and they say they've found a route to resolution, but actually nothing changes. And this happens again and again. So we need to raise awareness of these challenges, show that they are so prevalent in our workplaces through the data, and then really change it on a systematic level, on a government policy level as well.
So you're really kind of really trying to collate huge amounts of data, ideally to make a true impact and a fundamental change to this area. And I love that. I love that. That's hugely motivational. It's obviously something you feel very strongly about. But one thing strikes me, and I talked about this when we just said hello. How are you juggling all of this? How are you managing a full-time job, being a mum, and a part-time entrepreneur? I mean, is it really part-time? I mean, how does that work?
You're never going to, I suppose, have everything. I think that is such a lie and a dream that people are sold that's not realistic. I'm failing at everything at all times and just getting by. And I think that's the best way to do it, because you learn. I'm sure some people will thrive all the time, but I think it's just figuring out what your priority is at that time, juggling it to make it make sense. No, of course, Speak Out is not part-time, but sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, and you do it as a team. We rely heavily on volunteer support and other people providing guidance, expertise. We're not going to solve anything, especially because we're technical. Data is where we know our stuff. So we need support from other people who are more experts in marketing, policy to help us, because there's no point in us taking on everything. We're not the right people. We're the right people at getting that data and doing the analytics, and other people are the right people to solve the problem wider. So it's knowing what lane you're in, not trying to do everything and asking for help.
Okay, you must be very efficient, and you must be very
not at all.
Really?
Not at all.
Wow.
The whole of my life I've just winged it, I feel. But it's just not being scared to fail, because failure is not a bad thing. So you might as well just dive in and give it a go.
Okay, and how do you make it work with your co-founder then? I mean, how do you work out priorities, next steps, who's doing what?
We send each other WhatsApp voice notes probably once, twice, 3 times a day with streams of information, and hope one of us picks up the other action that's been dropped. Neither one of us organised. We're both neurodivergent as well, so having to figure that one out. Somehow it works. We are a great team. We were friends for years before we set up an organisation. We were colleagues. We roughly knew how each other worked, but never really did until we started working together on this. And we complement each other. I think because of our partnership and because of how we work together is why it's successful. And I don't know whether it would have been as successful with any other partnership.
I mean, it was interesting to hear you say complementary, because that was exactly what kind of sprung to my mind. I mean, it must be complementary for it to be working effectively, and you must be very close. That working relationship's obviously very strong. So well done, and good for you. I'm asking you lots of questions, and I've got plenty more, but I'll hand back to Mike to kind of take things forwards for a second.
Okay. Frances, can we jump into the rub of the problem that you identified? Obviously, you've picked up that there was bullying originally. There was bullying and harassment, and it needed more data. Can you explain a bit more about the size of this problem, what you've identified as the problem, and why it's energized yourself and your team to kind of really address it and work in your spare time to have an impact?
Yeah. So when we first started this, a old colleague of ours approached us because of challenges they were having in their workplace. They'd already raised it up to senior leaders, and they were like, bring back data, tell me that it's a real problem and it's not just you or your team. So she reached out and was like, can you help me? I have no idea how to do this. So me and Marie got together and thought about a survey. We're like, let's reach out to everyone in our network that we know ever worked at this organisation, including internal people that are still there, external people, and find out what the problem is. And within, I think, a week, we had about 400 responses of people who had experienced or witnessed something in this organisation. And we were like, that's shocking. Raising that data to senior leadership, then nothing happened. Their CEO, who was a woman at the time, knowing a women in STEM, you think, God, they'd want to solve this problem. No, did not care at all. Still didn't really value the data that was shown, and then took the legal route, went behind a closed survey. The actual only response that came out from this organisation was that employees could no longer run surveys to find out data from other employees. So that was a great response. Because of the lack of action, we knew we needed to do something, and we knew that organisations weren't going to do it themselves internally. And then every time we get new data, especially from global organisations that we see in the Times Top 100 employers for women, all the big employers that win awards have had issues. And every time you see it, it's like, how are they still winning awards for their employer experience? It's ridiculous, and we want to make sure people don't go into that environment again, and are always in a good position at work, I guess, because it's just ridiculous now.
And can you dig into a little bit more detail on what bullying and harassment is, and some examples of what you've seen through your surveys of behaviour that's going on that people is determining and what you're identifying as trends?
Yeah. So This is all open source in our dashboard, so go and have a look.
Good plug.
Driving
Good plug.
traffic, I know I didn't look really well there. But so bullying harassment ventures from slide comments that are continuous in the workplace, all the way up to full-on physical interactions, sexual harassment, and it varies drastically. Under legal definitions, bullying isn't actually covered under law. So for a white middle-aged man who has no protected characteristics, you're screwed if you're getting bullied. Yeah. Because you really don't have a legal leg to stand on. The only thing that's protected under law is harassment, and that is for protected characteristics. So there's such a double standards in what bullying harassment looks like, and then what's covered in law. That it's a really hard topic to define. It's like a single use case because it varies drastically, and what you can do to get support varies drastically as well.
Is that something that you're aiming for, Frances? A change in the law?
Yes, it is, but figuring out the right wording to take that forward and driving support for it is really, really challenging. That's why we're starting with sort of the NDAs and tackling the underlying issues to then be able to bring it up wider. But it's such a big topic that defining it under a single law is challenging.
I know you've explained the NDA situation to me a couple of times, Frances, but do you want to kind of elaborate a little bit more on what the current problem or the previous, I guess it's prior problem now, you've managed to get some policy change.
In the UK, not globally. So for those who've not heard of Can't Buy My Silence, it was set up by Zelda Perkin, who was Harvey Weinstein's PA, who broke her NDA. And it's to stop the misuse of NDAs when it comes to bullying and harassment in the workplace. We hear it time and time again when employees go through their route to resolution when they've reported bullying and harassment to their HR department. When they come to the resolution, which, shocker, is not really a resolution, and they leave the organisation, which happens an awful lot of the time, they're given a here you go, here's a handshake with some cash, leave quietly, but never talk about it. And that's where the NDA comes in. We've stopped the misusing NDAs for anything around bullying and harassment. We understand NDAs for business information, but not for your personal experience.
So that's what it refers to directly, the personal experience of that individual. Really interesting. And you've obviously collected lots of data. Is there demographics of organizations or sectors or organizational size? We talk a lot to SMEs. Is it SMEs? Is it large businesses? What any of trends you've seen?
So it's across the board, sadly. When we talk about bullying and harassment, we always say it's in our society today, and sadly it doesn't stop when you walk into the workplace. And it is in every type of organisation and every type of industry. Our data do show industries that have it more prevalently, but we do, with our data set, we always think there might still be bias in it because we come from a STEM background and there's a lot of STEM organisations that are identified in there. I always find it really interesting of the demographics that don't sit in STEM that show up continuously in our data. NHS being one, charitable organisations being others, that we don't normally have connections with. So the fact that it's very prevalent there is interesting and highlights the challenge.
And do you think it's linked to any specific type of management style or the way organisations are structured or people's understanding of bullying, harassment? Do you think there's underlying causes in there that you've been able to grapple at to try and see what might be the underlying effects rather than the NDA, which is the outcome effect?
So all of the above, to be honest. Lack of proper training for middle managers is key. The fact that societally, when you are in a room with a senior leader, they're de facto the person you all look to for guidance. So if anything happens in that room that's a bit negative, or someone makes a snide comment, or something is not quite right, if the most senior leader in the room doesn't act or sort of condones that behavior, or if he doesn't say anything or they don't say anything, it's condoned automatically. That behavior then escalates. I don't believe the senior person in the room realizes it's 100% their responsibility to call out that behavior there and then, otherwise it gets worse. And that responsibility to be the instigator in challenging those behaviors is never really discussed, and no one wants to challenge. It's really, really hard to challenge, and I recognize that even being in the industry and knowing how to do it safely, it's so hard. So trying to expect that of your senior leaders without telling them that's expected, or the impact of them not doing that, has such a knock-on effect into the culture. And sadly, we're just not informed that that's a really big impact.
We did a podcast a few weeks ago with someone called Lisa, talking about how difficult it is, how shit it is to be a middle manager. Sorry, and you talk about middle managers and how individuals are often very good technically, then suddenly they're thrown into quite a difficult management position where they get director level pressure, they're getting organisational level challenges from their teams, and they're ill prepared. It's interesting that you define that cohort as one of the challenging areas as well, in that those individuals are being let down as well by not being able to be trained or not being aware of what is expected of them in that environment. So it's not just them necessarily doing it maliciously as much as not knowing what to do.
No, don't get me wrong, there are malicious people out there.
Yeah.
But they're failed as well. Because if they're not set up with the tools to manage people, which is a complete skill in itself, being a manager, if you've not got the tools to do that, you're already going to be failing.
That's the way you described that dynamic in that meeting was really, really interesting. Quite powerful visual, I think, in terms of how these things kind of play out. And Mike, quite rightly point out, we, a few podcasts ago, we had a brilliant discussion with Lisa Robinwood about the challenges middle management face, and actually their problem is that they've got pressure from above and they've got pressure from below, and your point is echoing that, really, isn't it? They need adequate support. I'd love to know, in the scenario that you painted just now, where something inappropriate happens, there's a very senior manager in the room, there's middle management in that room as well. How should both sides or both aspects, how should they react? You mentioned senior leadership should get training on how to challenge in a safe way. Can you give us a flavour of how you would do so appropriately?
Yeah, so it very much depends on the situation. But if there was a comment said that wasn't appropriate, it is calling out, saying, I'm not sure what you said there was okay. Or why would you say, actually, one of the best ways is saying, could you repeat what you just said? Because then the person who's got to then re-say the inappropriate thing, and they might question themselves. So that's a safer way to do it, because you're not saying and not challenging. You're just saying, I don't know whether I heard you right. Could you repeat it? Because it stops them in the tracks. And that's a safe way to do it, and putting the onus back on them. And if they repeat it, then there's a bigger issue that you then do need to raise.
And is that an approach that senior leadership and middle management can take in that kind of scenario?
Yeah, I think so. I'd always say, if you are the most influential person in the room, not always the most senior person, because let's be clear, we don't always respect all of our managers. The most influential person in the room should be the one challenging those behaviors. If you don't feel safe to do it in the room, we talk about being an active bystander or an upstander. If you don't, and there's 5 Ds of being an active bystander, but if you don't feel able to direct the challenge, which is the first D, you can then talk to them outside the room, talk to their manager, ask for someone else to go and instigate and say, I keep on witnessing this in the meetings. Someone keeps on ignoring this person or makes inappropriate comments. Will you support me? Will you help me go and have a conversation? So you don't have to do it directly if you don't feel safe to do so, but you have to challenge that behavior in some way to make it a safe environment, because all we're seeing is people leaving. I suppose we've all been managers in this room at some point. How have you ever felt yourself in that type of situation, or seen something that you're like, oh, I don't know how to react, or I was never trained or prepared for anything, not just around bullying harassment? But have you been in that situation where you're like, God, I was not prepared to take on that task?
Yeah, I have. I'll openly admit that I've been in an organisation where I've had people screaming and shouting at other people, thinking it's inappropriate, and saying wrong things to certain individuals, and it's really hard to call it out. There's sometimes you can do it as a joke, or like you said, flip it back, but it's so hard to be confident enough to do that.
It's really hard.
Yeah, and sometimes comments can be made which aren't direct and blatant, but they can, almost that kind of passive aggressive.
Yeah,
type,
and like microaggressions.
well.
Yeah, that come on,
Yeah.
and it's also really hard because sometimes what you don't see as a challenge, or you're like, oh, they were just joking around, actually has a really big impact on other people. So how do you get that level right? And I always say, even if you're like, oh, they only meant it as a joke, if it impacted you and it actually did upset you or hurt you, or you were threatened in any way by that, it needs to be acted on. It doesn't matter if the person meant it as a joke. That's not okay anymore. And it's managing that behavior in different demographics, how people receive different information. Now we're on a global scale, we're interacting with people across different cultures. We're going to have to start adapting how we interact, because we're no longer on a local level where we all get the same banter.
Do you see, you've obviously looked at the demographic, I guess, as part of your data. And do you have a view on is it same in different countries, for example? Is it different in organisational structures?
It's different depending on the organisation, where they are. We see over in South Korea side, they're very hierarchical, and Japan's the same. It's very hierarchical compared to what we are in the UK, and especially across Europe. So it very much changes on a culture by culture basis, and different things are accepted in different cultures. So we can't always look at things on a global scale because it's just different. So looking at more local, finding out that data is key to help organisations change with the demographic they operate with.
And recognising your comment around where you're orientating your data at the moment, that might create a little bit of bias. Is it orientated predominantly towards women, or is it different cultures, neurodiversity, or whatever it might be?
So we do pick up every protected characteristic. We have a high percentage of women completing the survey. However, myself and Marie are females in STEM. So a lot of our network, the people we reach out to, the people who see our posts on LinkedIn are females in STEM. So our data could very much be swayed by the network we hold. So until we get hundreds of millions of data points, we won't be able to say Karagossa? God, I can't even say that word. Can't say across the board that is right. See, this is why I'm failing at everything, because I just don't know anything.
You can't speak anymore. Too tired. Too many jobs.
Winging it.
What would be sort of turning it around? What would be your recommendation to a founder, a SME, or even a senior director, manager in a large organisation, if they were to come with your set of information and say, look, there's trends of bullying in your organisation. What have you seen as good practice, and what have the outcomes and benefits been of that good practice?
So I would say, sadly, bullying and harassment will show up in your workplace at some point, because different people coming together, it just exists in society. It's your route to resolution, those processes and procedures that are key to getting right. It's believing the individual when they first talk to you about it, responding well at that first reporting stage, if that's a manager, if that's you telling a colleague. That first interaction has more impact than the whole process itself. If you were believed and people said, I want to support you, I completely believe what you said, let's figure out a way to resolve it, that interaction is more powerful than all the rest of stuff going
Amazing. What a great insight.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. So it's kind of being open and supportive, right? And allowing that communication channel to exist that is seen as a safe space. So what other insights, what other patterns? You were talking about. Is there a difference between men and women in the way bullying occurs? Are there other kind of other, I guess, patterns, behaviours that your data is highlighting that's worth sharing?
So one of my big things that I was shocked by was that individuals, especially men being bullied by women, every time we see this happening, the individual talks about how they just didn't see it happening. Like, it took them ages to realize that they were actually being bullied and harassed because of how they saw that demographic, their sort of relationship, and they didn't really see it until they were literally probably crying at their desk thinking, I don't want to go into work, or I don't want to be here. And they just never saw that insight. And that's the demographic that always says, I didn't see this coming. It had been happening for a long time. I hadn't recognized it until it impacted me, my mental health, which is always really interesting. And I think it's because one, men don't speak out about this at all. It's something they see as a weakness. And they also don't always expect the woman to be the instigator from it. So that it's just, it comes out of the blue, even though it's been happening for a while.
I see. So there's underreporting of that.
Yeah, yeah, massively. I think the majority of men who've completed our survey didn't go down the formal reporting route at all and just decided to leave their organisation.
Now, I was going to touch on that. The outcome of good practice here, right, is maintaining a better, more stable organisation, I guess. Because I'm thinking, you asked me the question, and I started to think about the team and the organisation. And actually, it was quite an unmotivated team in the end, and it was an unhappy team, and it wasn't functioning properly. And I guess the impact for the business is you have a team where you're seeing these trends of bullying and harassment. Actually, that is affecting the dynamic and efficiency of that organisation, that team.
Yeah, and the turnover of staff, the lost revenue that bullying and harassment has is probably one of the unseen things, but there's lots of reports how much a turnover of staff costs you, retraining, and again, the motivation to how productive that team is for you. A happy team come up and actually show up in the workplace, and a sad team, a team that feels threatened, who are not motivated to be there, don't provide anything for the organisation. So where do you really want to invest your time?
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing that strikes me, so your data is highlighting the outcome ultimately of bullying, the reporting, so incidents that have happened. So it's kind of a post-event data collection. Do you think in time you'll kind of collect enough data that you might be able to create preventative processes, actions? I mean, I suppose some of the things we've talked about kind of touch on that to an extent, like having open channels of communication, etc. But do you think there are even more powerful solutions that will arise based on what you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think the best way is to enable everyone to feel that they can challenge in a safe way, depending on what that challenge looks like. When it happens, we know that if you prevent it from happening at the start, so if something starts to happen and you say, no, that's not acceptable, then it doesn't continue within the organisation. However, if you let one thing go, it escalates and escalates, especially around sexual harassment. That one, if you start letting the small things go, that escalates very rapidly and can be very significant and include police and things like that at the end. So that, especially sexual harassment, but any type of toxic behaviour needs to be stopped at the start. Otherwise, it gets worse.
Yeah.
So interesting. Have you got any areas? Yeah, so I was just going to jump on. Have you got any other areas that are insights from this or interesting areas? Because otherwise, I want to touch on how you set up Speak Out and Frances's journey.
No, I think we've covered all of the top things that I think. I'm sure Marie will kill me saying no, I didn't talk about this, but sorry.
she'll get to reply later and add some comments. Have you so it's obviously the way you talk about it, Frances, and I've known you for a long time, and I knew when you set it up you went for it and you were passionate about it. How have you found the experience of setting up Speak Out and building a purpose-driven entrepreneurship journey while everything else in your life?
Um, a massive learning curve, and this is one of the only times I'm going to give Mike credit for anything. If I hadn't worked in the
Really?
innovation, yeah, I
Really?
know, I,
Go.
I know,
I'm listening.
I know, shocking. If I hadn't worked in the innovation side and understood how to sort of go through proof of concepts and MVPs, and know all those business case processes and stuff, I would never have been able to start any type of organization, because it isn't just setting something up overnight, getting a website and thinking this will happen because everyone will care about it. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and we're not set up for success out of schools to do entrepreneurship. It's not taught. No one really knows the process. It's not shared unless you're in the know. So knowing the innovation and design thinking process that me and Mike worked on was essential for me being able to do this at all.
I love that, Frances. I'll make sure I take that snippet.
I know, I can't believe I've given Mike a compliment at all. But without a doubt, if I didn't know the innovation process, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But it isn't a hard process to learn. So it's something that, even though I say I wouldn't have been able to do it without it, look up design thinking. It's a process that you look at what people, processes, technology, and making sure you're ticking all those boxes. It's not hard to teach yourself. It doesn't take long. Dive in and figure it out, I think, is the best approach, because that's all we did. We knew there was a problem, we knew we wanted to solve it, we asked for help from every single person we could possibly think of, because we couldn't do it on our own. And I think that's what people are scared when they start this organization, like start something. They're like, oh, we don't want to tell people until it's a success. People might judge us, people might like laugh at us for doing it. We asked everyone. We put it out on LinkedIn and we asked every single person in our network to support us, because we knew there was a problem and we knew we couldn't do it on our own. And I'd say just tell people. If people laugh at you, they're not the people you want in your network anyway. Get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. That's incredibly brave, though, what you did there, because I really, and I totally identify with that fear when you're setting up a business, and I know Mike does as well. We've talked about it on podcasts before, as well as with each other. I think kind of the fear of failure before you started something and wanting to open up to your network I think it's a really hard thing to do. So well done, you guys, for just totally leaning into that. Was there a bit of a process before you got there, or were you like, no, we've got to do it?
I don't think me and Marie thought strategically about this at all. I'm trying to think back because it was a few years ago now, and we just thought, let's give it a go. We did have a nice mural, like whiteboard online, and did have a planning session. I'm going to have to go back and look at it now because I'm well interested to see what that covered. And we had some rough ideas, but I think we just dived in and figured it out.
Amazing.
And do you think that's because you became
brave thing to do? Really?
Do you think that's because you became passionate about the problem, Frances, and then you and Marie just went, let's go and we'll see where it leads? And yes, you had the advantage of a security of a job, right? So you didn't have the financial risk, but you did have the challenging and capacity and time-based risk that is really important. But do you think you just doubled down on the problem and went, let's just go for it and see where it leads?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we did. We knew there was an issue, and we just dived in. It's really hard to explain how we did it, because we couldn't have started what we did without support either. We reached out to every organization who would give us free things. So we got free access to software so we could start doing Mural. We got our G Cloud stuff. I'm sorry, I work for Microsoft, but we're on Google for Speak Out because they gave us a great deal on that. We got a consultancy firm to help us build our dashboard. So we reached out, and I think because we got the traction with the support, reached out to the organizations saying we're not for profit, we're doing this work, and people were willing to help us. It helped drive our motivation. And I would never have thought about asking for help, to be honest, from organizations. And I also thought why would people volunteer for free? This sounds ridiculous. But they did. As soon as it was Marie's idea to start doing volunteers, and everyone came to help, and it was amazing. So I would 100% advise it.
Yeah, I think that's testament to kind of what you're trying to do, and the power of your network. Absolutely brilliant. I had a question. You mentioned earlier that both you and your co-founder are neurodiverse. We had a podcast very recently with Claire Butcher, and we talked about the challenges that neurodiversity kind of paired with entrepreneurship. The kind of challenges that can bring. Can I ask you, has that been difficult for you guys to manage?
So when we started this journey, I knew I was dyslexic. I got diagnosed when I was 7 or 8. So I've known my whole life the benefits that dyslexia brings me, my strengths and my weaknesses. Whereas Marie didn't find out she had ADHD until we'd started to speak out, and we actually had quite a few sessions on inclusion in the workplace, which included ADHD. And it was through those sessions she was like, oh, wait a minute, I have ADHD, and now she's got diagnosed. So I don't think at the start we had any concept of how that would play into it, but now we understand both our challenges more. We can see what complements and why we work together. And actually, a dyslexic founder and ADHD founder are so complementary in skills. It's unbelievable. All of Marie's strengths are my weaknesses and vice versa. So if you are thinking of doing an organisation like this, it works so well. And it's probably why me and my other half worked really well in our household, because he's ADHD as well. So all complementary skill bases. We're like a full person together.
Okay. So you've got that complementary set of skills, which is awesome. You've got neurodiversity elements in there as well. Have they at times been kind of more difficult, or have they in some ways helped?
100% both. I feel like every type of thing has its positives and negatives. And we're both still learning about what our strengths are. The massive negatives to being neurodiverse, being organized, as you said earlier, that I must be organized. I am not. I forget everything. I have to write myself lists. I have to make sure I put meeting invites in my calendar to remind myself to do things. I have like my MOT meeting invite in my calendar every year, so my car actually goes in and doesn't just not get checked. So from a business point of view, it's really hard to run things when you can't remember. Luckily, Marie remembers everything, but she then has a hyper focus and her like not being interested at all. So it's jumping on her hyper focus when she's on it, and me managing everything around her. And then when she's off the hyper focus, it's me diving in on that, and she manages other things as well and finds that new interest. So it's figuring out how it works between us. But we fail every day and figure it out, and forget to email people back and forget who we've talked to. And I think you're just winging it, just figuring it out. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong. Like it doesn't matter. Who's going to remember?
Well, I honestly, I think,
it's the support element massive.
We're talking about neurodiversity here, but I think you're really talking about being a founder in a really busy whether you're a busy job, you're a busy job because you've got multiple jobs, right? But all founders are busy. We've seen this trend on Strive and Thrive all the time, where founders are busy, there's too much to do, they don't know how to manage it, and ultimately you have Romesh talks about it really nicely. It's like a roller coaster ride. You have days when it's really good, but you don't really celebrate it. And you have days when it's tough and you're like, oh my God, I've got to do another 17 things and it's really hard work. And you like beat yourself up. That's the same experience for any founder. But what I think your use case is interesting for me is we've been talking a lot to people to become entrepreneurs part-time. If they've got a purpose-driven initiative, set it up. and try and get it started. It might not be full-time work. It might be one day a week. It might be weekends. It might be part-time, but feel like you can do it. And I think you really importantly touched on something, Frances, which is around our education system and how we are not preparing people for entrepreneurship. I don't think it's a big learning curve, but I think you can teach people. It's go for being an entrepreneur. You can do it. It's not a huge learning curve. It's just give them the right sort of broad skill sets required to be able to be confident enough to give something a go. You don't need £1 million of 5 days a week and full-time salary to get going.
No, we started with a GoFundMe page. I think we raised from like £2,000, and that lasted us a year and a bit. We're just running our website, keeping everything lean, and we both worked full time at the time. For me, I could not stop work. I had a mortgage to pay. I didn't have a child at the time, thank God, because I tried to set up an organisation with a child, which Marie did, my co-founder. Hats off to her. She also learned to fly in that time and has got a PPL. She is like Superwoman. But you just aren't going to be able to do everything. Just give it a go and see what works. If it starts moving really fast and starts taking off, start managing your time. Figure out whether you can go part-time. You want to dedicate more time to your passion project. When that's the right time to do it, you'll know, because you'll start seeing that revenue land, or you'll start seeing all those contracts come through, and you'll be able to manage that time. Flexible working is now ingrained in the way our organizations work. If you are not in an organization that's flexible, if you're in an organization that's mandating you being in the office 5 days a week, look for another job, because many organizations out there are not mandating that and do thrive on their staff being flexible and be able to work in the hours that suit them. For me, when I moved from one organization to Microsoft, and coming here, I said, I do not profit. I do not want to work Friday afternoons, but I want to be paid full time. So I want condensed hours, and that's what I want to continue doing. This is my not-for-profit. This is what I want to work. I won't join your organization unless you enable me to do that. And instantly they were like, yep, that works for us. We're really happy with that. Now with my child coming in, Speak Out slightly on the back burner because she's only in nursery 4 days a week. So I could move my condensed hours to look after her on Wednesday, me and my other half share it. And Microsoft is just being so flexible with that. And then Speak Out will start back up and running with it again properly when I have that time, when she's back in nursery full time. So it's just finding the organization that works for you. Microsoft is global and is still that flexible. So if you're not being that flexible, you're failing your staff anyway. And another Speak Out issue, but it's just finding the one that works for you.
And of Microsoft obviously supporting Frances here, but are they also supporting Speak Out? Are they supportive of what you're trying to do there as well? Are they both doubling down on that?
So they're very happy with what I'm doing, but I don't get publicised by Microsoft. It'd be really good if they started publicising what we do.
Yeah. Interesting.
We'll see whether that happens. Microsoft, hit me up.
Really good. Romesh, what are your insights from this? Anything you'd like to reflect on?
Some really good ones. I think, Frances, I'm just getting, you and your co-founder you've just gone for it, right? So I'm
you make it sound positive, and neither one of us would say that we were brave, or I don't know. We are both figuring it out. We know we're both amazing because we are. I mean, I'm the best person.
I think you say it so matter of factly, but that's great. That's great. But not everyone can do that so readily. So I think you should give yourselves a real pat on the back for that. I think bravery, going for it. I think having clarity in terms of what you're trying to do is really important. And I'm also getting that supportive, complementary relationship you've got with your co-founder, which enables you to flex, so you can be a part-time entrepreneur and do something you're really passionate about whilst having an understanding, full-time employer that's supporting in that way. So I'm getting all of that in the round, and I think it's building up a really inspirational picture. And it shows, doesn't it? It goes to show that entrepreneurship isn't just one way of doing things. There are so many ways. And if you've got an idea, passions, thoughts, get yourself the right dynamics and environment, and you can achieve great things.
Yeah, find what works for you, because it's not going to be the same journey as anyone else.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I talk a lot about journey, and I think you're right. I think what you've done, Francis, you're inspirational in two key areas. One is the key purpose that you're trying to achieve, and I think in Speak Out, and you did a really good job articulating that. But I think the thing that you've demonstrated to me again here, and I've watched you do this for the past 5 years, is it now? Sort of set it up and go for it, and raise the profile and do something on your own back with a friend, and that's going to have quite big impact. And I think people need to follow that as much as the purpose of what you're doing with Speak Out, because others can do it if they really want to, against important purposes that they genuinely care about. They're like, why aren't we doing these issues around water pollution or whatever it might be? There's an opportunity for you to set up a business and try and do it yourself if you're prepared to go for it.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, if me and Marie can do it, anyone could do it.
I'm not going to be mean to you, so I'm not going to say anything. But you've always been that kind of person. But I think other people, it's not unique, is it? And it's not something just down to an individual. Anyone can go ahead and do it. And being an entrepreneur in any space is really interesting. It's rewarding. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I do enjoy it, but I'll be really happy when Glassdoor buys us out for millions of pounds and I don't have to do it anymore. No.
You wouldn't sell. You'd be too bored, Francis.
Marie would never let me sell, so it'd be fine. Well, we could start a new business if we sell. We'll start something else.
You would do something else, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we would, 100%.
So what's next for you over the next couple of years then, Francis?
I don't know. We've not thought that far ahead. Actually, we are trying to figure out our next step for Speak Out. We've got a focus on women in data at the moment, figuring out how we support women, but expanding that out. I'm also hoping that my daughter sleeps through the night at some point over the next 5 years. That'll be a delight. And then I'm going to continue working at Microsoft as well, because I very much enjoy working at Microsoft. So it's a nice tag team to figure out what's going on. I never have a plan. I think the 5-year plan is a load of BS. I don't think that ever comes to fruition, and you need to take the opportunities that come whenever they come, because you'll never see them coming. So I don't plan. Let's figure it out.
Brilliant. Absolutely love that. I'm going to leave it at that point. So firstly, Francis, thank you very much for joining us. Really great to have you on here. Such an interesting journey in a number of areas. So thanks everyone for listening to this and watching, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion. For everyone listening, Strive and Thrive is our regular series of discussions for entrepreneurs, founders and business leaders. And we've got some really interesting guests planned now out to 2026. So really good set of planned guests going forward. Our next session will be in a few weeks. I hope you've enjoyed today's session, and we'd love you to follow and subscribe on our YouTube podcast and all the other channels you listen to your YouTube, your podcast on. A big thank you to Romesh, who's the best co-guest as ever, and to the rest of the Strive and Thrive team who has sat behind the scenes doing all the real work. Yeah, that was hard. How did I do? Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks again to Francis.
Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.